One of the top names in all of football over the last few years is Bryan Bresee. He was the #1 recruit coming out of high school, showed glimpses of being an absolute superstar at Clemson, and is now a first-round pick for the New Orleans Saints. Bresee is likely going to have a long and productive NFL career and live up to all the hype he had, but he also has another side to his story that many of you guys either need to hear more about or didn't know to begin with. Unfortunately, absolute tragedy would strike his family as cancer would claim the life of his sister. This affected the family deeply and will now help motivate him to become one of the best players in the NFL in my opinion. In today's video, I want to tell you the inspiring story of Bryan Bresee. We're going to talk about his insane rise, talk about how he became the #1 recruit in the country, his time at Clemson, how he dealt with tragedy, and more importantly, how I think he'll do on the New Orleans Saints. But before we get started, quickly be sure to leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you love videos like this, and turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload. I have a ton of videos coming because the season's coming up soon. Now, let's get started and talk about the insane rise of Bryan Bresee. Going back in time, the Bresee family was a huge deal when it came to athletics, as both of his parents were college athletes. His father played football at James Madison, and his mother played college basketball. Bresee said his sister also played college basketball at George Washington, and it was safe to say that the Bresee family was pretty dang good at sports. His dad, Rich, knew that his son was going to be a football player from a young age. Growing up playing both football and basketball, Bryan excelled in sports according to his father. He said, quote, "In first and second grade, I could just tell Bryan loved the sport. He played quarterback and defensive line, and he excelled very early on. And he played other sports. He played baseball and played travel basketball for some of the bigger name AAU organizations. But one sport took his heart. He said football was just his love. Bryan is extremely competitive. He loves the physicality of the game. He's extremely intense, and I think we knew early on that was the sport for him." While he would eventually arrive at Urbana High School, by the time he was a sophomore, he was named the #1 overall player in the country, and his meteoric rise was no accident. After his 8th grade season, everything went crazy as he got an offer from Maryland, then Purdue, then Penn State, and then the floodgates completely opened. He said, quote, "Everything is still kind of new to me right now. I didn't think it would happen this fast. Right after the season, there was really nothing going on, and there were no coaches or schools or anything. Then all of a sudden, it took off, and I wasn't expecting it." He went from no Power 5 offers to 16 Power 5 offers very quickly, and became a national sensation by the time he was a sophomore. He would have a few changes though, as he would eventually transfer to Damascus High School in Maryland, which is one of the best in the DC area. He continued to be a 5-star beast for the next few seasons, and eventually all the major schools were doing everything they could to try and land him. Many thought it would come down to Alabama and Clemson, but he would have a rubric he was going to follow for where he would go. When it came time to pick a school, where was the 5-star going to go? What would be the driving factor? Well, for his son, it was about relationships when choosing the school he wanted to go to. His dad said, quote, "What we did early on in the recruiting process is let Bryan know that distance wasn't going to matter to us. We didn't care if it was a car ride or an airplane ride. We wanted Bryan to be as comfortable as possible wherever he went." He ended up choosing Clemson over Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. My goodness, that's a pretty loaded offer sheet. How did it all happen? Well, the Tigers took the lead in his recruitment following his visit to the South Carolina game in 2018. Clemson also strengthened their position during their junior day in January of the following year and eventually secured his commitment following an outstanding trip to the spring game. When Bresee committed to the Tigers, he joined a long list of top recruits choosing them. This included both Trevor Lawrence and Daquan Bowers, who were also #1 overall recruits in the country who chose Clemson. During his DeMatha career, he was insane. He finished with 134 career tackles, 80.5 tackles for loss, and 35 sacks. That's why he was listed as a #1 overall recruit in the country. 24/7 Sports listed him as a 5-star and the top player at his spot. His measurables were absolutely insane, and he had a verified 5.2 40-yard dash, a 4.21 shuttle time, and a 31-inch vertical leap. His shuttle time would have been second best overall at the Combine, only behind Nick Bosa, and he was faster than Christian Wilkins. He was also 6'5" and 290 pounds, and Bresee was physically ready to compete against offensive linemen at the college level. Playing on Sundays was going to be a matter of when, not if for Bryan, but how would he end up doing at Clemson? Well, let's take a look. After only 2 days on campus at Clemson, the coaches raved about how good Bresee was and how he was better than advertised and was going to dominate in his 3 years there. Bryan would have a chance to play pretty early on, and his family was going to be there to watch. Early on in the 2020 season, one moment in particular was extremely special as the emotions were overwhelming for his family. Bresee recorded his first collegiate tackle, which happened to be a sack on Wake Forest's quarterback Sam Hartman. His dad said, quote, "It was extremely emotional to see how far he'd come from the All-American game to when he arrived on campus and all the hard work he had to put in." He stepped into the lineup as a true freshman in 2020, finishing with 33 tackles and 4 sacks. He also forced a fumble and played in 12 total games. His 4 sacks were the most by a true freshman interior lineman in all of college football. It was safe to say Bresee lived up to the hype and was setting the tone for the future. Going into 2021, Bresee was expected to have another great season, but unfortunately, he would get hit with a roadblock. He only saw action in 4 total games, as unfortunately, he would tear his ACL. This was absolutely heartbreaking, but still, he was dominant. He was named a third-team All-ACC selection, despite playing in only a third of the games. He managed to record 15 tackles, 3 TFLs, 1.5 sacks, and even an interception. Bresee was truly great. After an 11-month recovery, he would return to the field, and this was a huge deal. He said, quote, "It was really exciting to be back out there with the guys, and again, just doing what I love." This was early on in the 2022 season, and while Bresee was happy to be back, he unfortunately would have to deal with the most difficult roadblock of his entire life, and something that no one ever wants to have to hear or experience. His sister was battling cancer, and it would eventually end up taking a tragic turn. But he was going to have a chance to leave a lasting legacy at both Clemson and in the NFL. One scout said, quote, "As far as pure talent goes, Bresee is likely the most gifted interior lineman in all of college football. That would definitely place him within the first round, which was going to give him a chance to leave that legacy. That would be on full display, but as I said, it was extremely difficult." His sister would unfortunately pass away due to the brain cancer she had, and the story would rock college football and took over the month of September. I personally bought the Ella Strong shirt, and I still wear it a decent amount. Bresee decided to sit out the Louisiana Tech game before an emotional return against Wake Forest, which was both an emotional and a game thriller. DJ Uiagalelei had one of the best games of his Clemson career, and they ended up beating Wake Forest. After losing her, he said, quote, "I think about her every day. She's my inspiration, and you know I play for her and her memory. Being out there on the field with your teammates and coaches, it makes it easy to focus on what you're doing in the moment there and to try to take your mind off things for a little bit. It's definitely helped me through these tough times." It is absolutely awful to hear that, and no one should ever have to go through a situation like that, but luckily, he had someone to learn from. I'm not sure if they ever talked or how close they were, but I do believe that James Skalski lost his dad back in 2017, and Skalski went on to set records at Clemson and had a terrific career with the Tigers. While Bresee may not have the eye-popping stats, he may have a chance to do that in the NFL. In total in 2022, Bresee finished with 15 tackles, 3.5 sacks, and 1 pass deflection. Again, his numbers were not insane by any means, but you cannot expect that much out of an interior lineman. He was also going through a lot. For the season, they'd end up playing North Carolina in the ACC Championship, which they'd win, before they'd play number 6 Tennessee in the Orange Bowl and would unfortunately lose. It was definitely a tough way to go out, but at least he played in the bowl game, and now he could focus on the next stage of his career, which was always expected of him as the number 1 overall recruit. Unfortunately, he would not go number 1 overall, but he'd end up getting drafted with the 29th overall pick in the first round by the New Orleans Saints. This was a huge get, and both him and teammate Myles Murphy got to celebrate being first-round picks from that Clemson defensive line. The Saints can definitely use a player like Bresee, and from what I've heard so far, he's been fabulous for them. At 6'5" and 300 pounds, he's going to be practically impossible to stop, and should definitely help command that defensive line. Added to the fact that he has an extreme purpose and is fueled by his sister, this could make Bresee an all-time player. He said, quote, "It's been a dream of mine for a long time to play in the NFL. Just being on the doorstep of that dream coming true is really exciting for me and my family. I have been very busy, just taking it all in, and I'm enjoying every moment." So yeah, Bresee may never put up the biggest numbers in the NFL, but I'm sure he's going to be a dominant player for years to come. The Saints got a steal, the Saints got an awesome player, and I look forward to seeing what Bryan is going to do in the future. But what do you guys think? What do you think of his story? What player should I cover next? And what do you think of Bryan Bresee? Let me know down below. Leave a like if you're going to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about the rise of Kendre Miller. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.